Greetings and welcome to the channel. My name is Dr. Gyesie, transformational coach and shamanic leadership guide here at Inner Mileage, where we help folks understand the trauma-based links to their limiting self-beliefs and how to take inspired action to overcome it and live resonant lives right here. Today we're going to be talking about codependency, the hidden trauma contracts and how to break free. Codependency. And to start, it's important to note that most people believe codependency is a weakness, a dysfunction even. And that belief is actually part of the spell of codependence, because codependency is not a flaw. It's a trauma-bonded survival contract forged in the chaos of early life where the nervous system had no option, absolutely no option, but to bind itself to others as a path to perceived safety. Today we're going to dismantle that illusion, and you'll understand why codependency forms, why it persists despite therapy and self-help, and most importantly, why it holds the encrypted keys to leadership, self-mastery, and spiritual ascension. So let's begin. See, codependency is an unconscious contract for survival formed by developing mind-body-spirit system after relational trauma. And particularly early relational trauma such as neglect, abuse, invalidation teaches a child that their survival depends on the emotional states of their caregivers. This is from Dr. Judith Herman. And further, without attuned caregivers, a child's development, particularly right brain development, defaults to appeasement and hypervigilance based on what they're picking up in the environment. And further, from a neuroscientific perspective, repeated fear responses make the brain hyper alert to relational threats. In the same way, logical boundary setting becomes neurologically inaccessible, particularly in emotionally charged moments. And when we look at what research was done in polyvagal theory, there's this notion of the fawn response, which is appeasement and people-pleasing. And people-pleasing is effectively kindness without boundaries, recognizing that it's not a personality trait, but a nervous system adaptation for safety. From a spiritual lens, giving you some more evidence, in the Buddhist Dharma, for example, clinging, or upadana in the Pali language, and aversion, dosa, arise from early existential fear. So codependency is not craving, it is compulsive enmeshment rooted in the terror of isolation and annihilation. Similarly, the child consciously or unconsciously, that's me and you, or me or you, agree to manage the emotional ecosystem of the family to receive love and protection. And that is a trauma contract that extends into adult relationships. Epigenetically, trauma responses, including attachment and codependency patterns, are biologically inherited across generations. This is epigenetics. So the insight I want you to sit with is codependency is not weakness. It is the genius of a child's nervous system attempting to survive in an emotionally uninhabitable environment. Do you see? So why does codependency persist? Codependency repeats because the body, brain, and energy field prioritize familiarity over safety, right? Specifically, neurons that fire together wire together. So you realize that the trauma bonding pattern becomes the brain's default operating system when you do that for so long. And neurologically, it shows that this network that I just spoke about, the default operating system, reinforces self-referential thoughts, often rooted in old trauma narratives. And often we've trained the brain to believe in the negative rather than the positive. So it reinforces this paradigm. And when you look at it from a biological perspective, trauma creates energetic attractor fields. This is David Hawkins, right? And this vibrational field of shame, guilt, and fear repeatedly draws similar relational dynamics. In other words, you attract it to you. Codependency, to be specific. And in chaos theory, trauma creates strange attractors, patterns of seemingly chaotic but recurring patterns. And you wonder, am I cursed? Why does this keep happening? Well, when you look at this from a hermetic standpoint, as above, so within, or as within, so without, as above, so below. And unconscious trauma or unconscious trauma contracts radiate into the quantum field. It really does. Summoning patterns and solutions that mirror your original wound based on everything we've just talked about. So unresolved emotions therefore become karmic loops, reinforcing loops, and lifetimes can be spent repeating the same relational dramas until one evolves consciously. So the insight here is your codependency is not due to stubbornness, even though it feels like it. It is inertia of trauma-made biology meeting the quantum mechanics of emotional fields. Do you see? And a lot of this is also epigenetic, inherited from others in your lineage. So what's the purpose of codependency? Does it have any upside? Well, codependency is the unconscious crucible that forges transformation and transformational leaders and healers. For example, beyond self-actualization lies self-transcendence, the desire to lead and serve. That comes from going through the various rungs as Maslow described it. And those who consciously heal relational patterns often evolve into transformational leaders, breaking generational cycles. Specifically, in leadership research, level 5 leaders emerge not from unbroken confidence, but from humility forged in adversity. And then you go to other references, when the fawn responds, this response to one of our people pleasers healed, your true self, the calm, courageous, confident self, naturally takes the leadership role. And similarly, the codependent wound is the call to adventure. Answering the codependency gap and wound in you initiates the wounded healer archetype, the wounded empath. And in indigenous wisdom traditions, those who suffer relational wounding often carry the soul contract of the healer leader. That's the one who transmutes pain into wisdom for others. Similar to the Bodhisattva path, that is, the one who has transcended suffering vows to lead others out of it. Therefore, codependency is not the sign of a lost soul. It's rather the first chapter in the making of a leader who can liberate others, right? This is just how it works. So what's the roadmap out? How do you get to sovereignty? Well, it first starts with radical awareness. You're understanding and identifying the trauma contract based on everything we've talked about. Then the second is nervous system liberation. You're doing breath work, somatic exercises, polyvagal exercises, etc. And this is where working with a coach like myself makes a difference. And if I can be of help, type transform in the comment section. And also connect to my Escaping Narcissistic Abuse course, which you can find at innermileage.com. Now, note that the body keeps score. This is the work by Bessel Call, confirming that body-centered healing is non-negotiable in trauma resolution, you see. So let's go into kind of what happens when you've gone beyond healing. And it's important to realize that your healing is not only for you, it's the blueprint for healing others. It really is. And leading with wisdom of healed wounds is actually the example that other people need to become liberated. And it's also based on your ability to hold power with compassion without reverting to people pleasing. As a result, you become the soul liberator, which is the one who ends karmic patterns for family, community, and for future generations. In other words, your healed codependency becomes your signature leadership frequency, which is the evidence of your soul's graduation from survival to stewardship. So what you once called codependency was never a flaw. It was a survival wisdom of a child written into the body, brain, and spirit. And that contract served its purpose. It really did. And the new contract is the sovereign leader's contract, and that awaits your signature, so to speak. And if you're ready to break old contracts permanently and embody relational mastery of a conscious leader, Get in touch with us at Inner Mileage by typing transform or send me a message at nan@innermileage.com. This is not just healing, it's spiritual and leadership ascension, and the time is now. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're notified of new videos. Peace.